station, my brothers and sisters, and welcome to Noggin Comics. This is our first video on this channel, and we were lucky enough to interview Dennis Vogen, a local creator in Minnesota, who we've known for quite some time, but we've never had the opportunity to interview him. And he said, "Yeah, let's do it." So please enjoy.
Okay, so I'm here with Dennis Vogen, who is a superstar local creator. So tell us about what you do, Dennis.
So what I do is I write stuff.
Yeah?
Wait, so first off, are you nervous? Because you should be nervous, because a lot is writing on this right now. So what I do is I write stuff. And the stuff I write is comic books and regular books, and that's about it. Yeah, just books and comic books. I currently have 5 novellas, 1 graphic novel, which was 5 single issues of a comic before it was a graphic novel. And I've got 1 non-fiction book as well, which was a collection of essays from the internet called Time is a Solid State that came out last month, or the month of May, depending on when you're watching this.
And that was from over 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, so about, I think I put dates on there, 2017 to 2021. So
yes.
I had gotten sober back then, and I just started writing really long essays on the internet. And eventually it got to the point where people were like, I really like those. And so I put them into a book, and yeah, and now they're a thing.
Yes, awesome. Yeah, and you sing, too.
I mean, that's...
So,
yeah,
like,
that's...
what don't you do? Like...
That's subjective. I'm not a very good cook.
Okay.
I'm a terrible cook. I'm very creative, though, but I can't cook food very well. So, yeah, I can't do everything.
Just add some spice.
Yeah, or a lot of spice, or just a lot of salt. Like, I think last week I was, I cooked, like, Italian dunkers, but they were tuna melts. So, like, I'm a very creative cook, but I don't, I'm not a very good cook. So.
Yeah, I feel you.
So I can write stuff and I can do music, but I can't make food.
You can make a pizza maybe, or put it in the oven.
Yeah, I can do that.
Awesome. Yeah, so kind of what started all of your inspiration? What started Sleeping Kitty Productions?
Well, Sleeping Kitty itself, like where that came from was, I love pets, I love cats, I love dogs. And when I was in high school, I would sign things, and I would just draw this little sleeping cat with like little Z's over its head, and that was just a thing that I did with my signature. I don't know why I did it. There was no reason for it.
And it stuck.
Yeah, and it stuck. So as I started to release different things, like I would do, an album of music, and then I would write something, or I would film a series or something. I realized that I needed a banner for everything. I'm like, what am I going to call this? And I had all these sketches of the sleeping cat, so Sleeping Kitty Productions was born.
Sold. Done.
That's what I did.
Nice. I love it. I love it. Yeah, so do you have any future plans for like the Weirdos or any other characters that you've written already?
So the Weirdos, the reason that I wanted to do something new is because, SpiderMan and Batman, they're great, but they have decades of continuity behind them. So to write them like as a new writer is very daunting, and it's kind of hard creatively to kind of go new places. So I invented brand new characters that if another writer wanted to jump in and build on their mythology, it's really easy. Right now they just have basically 1 issue each.
Right.
And so if someone, another creator walked up to me and said, I really like the Blue Ringer, I have an idea for a story, I'm like, let's do this.
Yeah.
So actually these characters are for everybody to play with.
Right.
That's why they exist. Personally, I want to do maybe graphic novels going forward. So like I'll pick a character or 2 and make a graphic novel, and then eventually bring them all back together as the Weirdos.
Yeah.
But I have one idea for the Flying Squirrel in the Sketch. It's a graphic novel called Fire Start Again.
Ooh.
And it's written, so I mean, it
exists.
Yeah, it exists, but it's just not, it's not drawn, which is important when it comes to comics.
Right.
Comics is words and art, everyone.
Right.
It's both things.
Combined.
Yeah. So I have that, and then I have another idea for a Blue Ringer story as well.
Yes.
And like I said, I probably do them as like graphic novels, so maybe somewhere between 3 to 6 issues worth of content.
Yeah.
As opposed to filling up, like single issues into
Right, and you can
stories
read it all at once.
Exactly.
And you just binge read and come back to it.
Yeah, I love full arcs like that. So.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I do have ideas for the Weirdos in the future. I'm also working on an all ages graphic novel called Brushfire. And I've been working on that for a few years, and my goal is this summer to put out the first wave. I've got 3 waves of that planned, and it's my first real all ages thing. A lot of my stuff is very much for adults, whether that's content or language. I don't really aim at a younger audience, and this is very much for everyone. Yes. And that makes me really excited for it. So,
awesome.
So Brushfire is my main focus right now. That's what I'm working on.
Awesome. And like, what inspired you with these characters in the Weirdos, or just with your characters overall?
So,
like, what do you take inspiration from?
That's a good question. So when I create a character, every single character starts off as a straight white boy, because that's what I am. And it's like, that's just how you create things. You can only see the world through your own point of view.
Yeah.
And so every character starts that way. Yeah. And it gets very boring very quickly.
Right.
And once you start to practice like empathy and compassion, you're like, oh, this character could be anything. And that's eventually where the Weirdos came out of. Yeah. So it was 4 people who were just like me, and then I made them slightly different, and then slightly more different, and then slightly more different, and then they became the characters that they are. To where now there's only one straight white dude in the whole thing, which is a much more interesting world, in my opinion.
Right.
So that's where they kind of came from. I wanted to write about adult issues.
Right.
And so every character has kind of an angle that they're coming from. And they needed a reason to end up at the rehab facility like Mary at the end of the book. And so, Ashley the Flying Squirrel, he's an alcoholic. So that was his path. Axis, who becomes the Sketch, she goes through a depression to where she becomes suicidal. So that was her arc. And then we have the Blue Ringer, who has cancer. And he's also, I made him a marine biologist, so he ended up in water, and that brought him to the lake in a different way. Yeah. And then there's Das, who has anger issues, and he's got his own thing going on, and he ends up at the rehab facility as well. So I got to talk about like actual real life things through comic book characters, through superheroes, which was very important to me.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where the genesis of the team came from.
Yeah, and real people, like while reading it, you can just relate to these people.
Hopefully, or I mean, like in a very sad way.
Yeah,
right.
Like, I mean,
it hurts, but like the whole point of the book is connection. Like it's human connection.
Right.
So once you connect, you can hopefully start to get through those issues.
Right.
So yeah, it sucks to look at some of the characters and be like, yeah, I've been there. I've been through a bad breakup and I've slept for 8 months. Like it sucks to know that someone else feels like that, but there's also like healing in that connection.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Awesome. So then about your novellas then, where did it start?
So actually with none of these here, I wrote a sci-fi story. I probably, if I can grab that. Yeah. So Them and Us. So that was back in 2013. I wrote these, they're raunchy, they're violent. They're like if Quentin Tarantino wrote science fiction, a series called Them and Us. And that was the beginning of the whole publishing thing. I raised money through Kickstarter because enough people believed in me to help me, make these modest books, and that's where it started. Flip kind of came in between Them and Us, so I was kind of working on finishing the project. And Flip is about dreams, and I always wanted to write this story about dreams. And I had this idea about a guy who killed people in their dreams. And I was like, well, if there's a guy who's killing people in their dreams, there has to be a guy who's trying to stop him.
Gotcha.
And that's where Flip came from.
Okay.
So I had that idea for a long time, and then in November there's something called National Novel Writing Month, and it's where people try to write a whole book in a month. And I was like, I could do that.
Yeah.
And so November came around, and on November 2nd, I got the idea for the ending of Flip, and I was like, I know where it goes, so maybe I'll try doing that book, and I did.
Wow.
And so I wrote Flip in less than a month. And then I ended up releasing it the next month as like my second book, but it was in between my first and third book, which was a series.
Right. Wow. Yeah. So it's almost kind of like the Neil Gaiman of Sandman mixed with Quentin Tarantino.
yeah, it's not. So Flip got a little less raunchy than Them and Us, because Them and Us was just me being like in my mid-20s and just wanting to make a sci-fi book where like people were, like I said, like the main character Kim, she's violent, like she says what she's thinking, she hurts a lot of people, she's trying to find her parents. Do you know what I mean? When you're in that situation, you might act like that.
Right.
Flip was a little bit more subdued. It was the themes of it are more mature. It's about like loss, and so it was kind of a change of pace, and I needed that when I was working on Them and Us, kind of like a little break, a little dream, if you will, in between those two.
A dream within a dream.
A dream within a dream. Yeah. And at that point, I hadn't even read Sandman. I didn't read Sandman until like my 30s, and so I was aware of it as on my peripheral, and then I read Sandman. I'm glad I read Sandman after I wrote my own book on dreaming.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Because I got my own perspective on it. I wasn't influenced by that at all.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna ask, what was that an influence to you? Okay, so then what people were an influence to you? Like what authors or did it just come to you?
Yeah, I'm one of a kind.
Yeah,
so all of my thoughts are completely original. They've never been thought before. No, I grew up. I was born in '85, so I grew up, late '80s. I'm a '90s kid basically, and I had the same influences that most people did. I read Goosebumps like everyone else did.
Right.
But here's the thing. Here's what makes me different. I think I read Goosebumps, but I had my own series called Shivers.
Oh. Okay.
See where I went there? I took Goosebumps and I made it into Shivers, and it was basically me like writing fan fiction of Goosebumps.
Yeah.
So I mean, even at like 6, 7, 8 years old, I was still writing.
Yeah.
I was writing. I was mimicking, I was copying what I was reading, but
Okay.
at the same time, you know, I have my own book series called Shivers.
Yeah, make it your own. That's the point, right? Awesome. Let's see. So what about your comic creating process? Like, is your favorite part, least favorite part?
So I just love writing in general.
Yeah.
I like the stuff that you discover. You know, you discover stuff reading, but you also discover stuff writing.
Yep.
And you discover stuff about yourself. You discover stuff about the characters you're writing. I love writing in general. I could write all the time. The art part, I drew the Weirdos because I had to. I like one of my big goals from when I was a little kid was I want to have my own comic book, and I kept hearing that comics are a collaborative process.
Yeah.
Like you work with other people, so I was
Right.
just looking for an artist, and it wasn't happening. So I said I can kind of draw, and I already have this story. I have these characters, so I drew it for that. So I'm not a huge fan of drawing. I mean, I love art. I'm not the best artist. I
Yes,
have my own
right.
style.
Right.
But so I would say for sure, like backgrounds. I hate drawing backgrounds, and so I will try to like set the scene like you would think of like a play.
Yep.
Do you mean like you go to a play? They don't set up everything on stage so you know you're there. They kind of put like a chair there and a table there so you know you're in a kitchen.
Right.
That's kind of how I draw.
Right.
So I'm like I'll put little pieces so you know where they are, but I'm not like drawing in the picture frames in the background because
Right.
that kind of stuff doesn't really interest me. I'm kind of
Yeah.
like let's move on with the story.
Yeah.
You know?
Make
So
it your own.
yeah. So emotionally, I love to draw like characters and like how they're feeling. I just
Yeah.
don't like drawing the stuff around it. So I'm getting better at that. I understand that backgrounds are, you know, the visual aspect of backgrounds is important when you're reading. So
Oh, totally.
it's one of my flaws, but I'm working on it.
Awesome. But I think it works for the story though too, because.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I think it works. I mean, it's good.
I do
so,
too. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, it's its own thing for sure. And,
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. So what gets you like your creative juices? Like what gets them flowing? Or like is there certain music you like or like
I mean,
stuff you read, watch?
Pretty much anything that I consume art-wise,
Yeah.
like that'll get me going.
Oh,
Do you know what I mean? Like you watch the new episode of Loki and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is
Yes.
brilliant. I want to do
Yeah.
something better than this, you know? So a lot, like, pretty much anything that I watch or read or
Yeah.
just consume like ends up inspiring me.
Yeah.
And I love thinking about the subconscious a lot. And I
Yeah.
don't really believe in like any kind of divine inspiration, but I believe that we're always working on stuff in our heads, and if you let that happen, then really
Yeah.
cool stuff will come out. And so when you have that belief, like when you're writing, you never really feel like you're stuck.
Right.
You know what I mean? You start going and you realize that it's all inside of you. You've got it. So if you just keep going, like eventually the good stuff will come out, and usually it does.
Awesome.
But that's subjective.
Wow. Yeah. That's inspiring though too.
I mean, all of it's gonna be very terrible stuff, but I like it. So
Yeah. I mean, I like dark things. So.
me too.
Let's see. So what are some like readings of like books or comics that you would recommend people,
Oh my gosh, actually, I
or
could.
your books?
So I felt like that you would come up with like what do you enjoy and what should people read. So I wrote down some
You
stuff.
made a list.
I did just in case I forgot anything. So Saga is like, I
Yes.
mean,
Brian came
if
on.
anyone's like I've never read a comic, I'm like just read this one,
Yes.
just this one. And if you hate
Yes.
it, then maybe the comics aren't for you
Maybe.
because it's
Yeah.
that good. And then on the Brian K. Like on that wavelength, you know, there's Paper Girls,
Girls.
which is just they all came on those big hardcovers, and
Yes.
I read the whole thing in one sitting, and I'm like, God, this is just so good. And they're
Yes.
making that a TV show now,
Yes.
which is great.
Yes.
Brian K. actually brought me back into comics because I've been a comic fan since a kid, but I kind of fell out of it. Why the Last Man? I heard you got to pick up these trades; they're amazing, and I picked them up, and yeah, that brought me right back into comics. So I owe Brian K. for that.
Yeah.
What
I
else do I have here?
got Kyle into Saga. I got my brother into Saga.
Yeah.
You can get
Because
Saga.
you're a good human.
Right.
You're
Just
welcome.
read it.
I
Just
mean,
read it.
yeah, I mean,
Like
it's just
binge
so
read
good.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
I want to say I got so Sandman is there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of if you read it now, it might feel like Sandman is influenced by things, but Sandman was first.
Right.
It influenced
Oh,
everything
yeah.
else.
Oh,
So,
100%.
yeah, so it's very interesting to kind of see where it all came from. And
Yeah.
that's good. I got Monstrous down. I don't know if you know
Yes. I
Monstrous.
love monsters.
There was a lot of hype behind it, like for the first few issues, and I feel like it kind of died out, but it's still just as good as it was.
Just the character building and like the artwork and like the world building.
It's
so
amazing. I saw a
good.
review of it that said, she doesn't hold your hand when it comes to world building, and she doesn't. Like you're
Yeah.
thrust in this world, and if you can't figure it out, it's up to you.
Yeah, Sana Takata's artist.
Yeah,
Marjorie Liu.
amazing.
Yeah, so
amazing.
good. Definitely
I got We Three, which is one of my favorite graphic novels. Grant Morrison's one of my favorite writers of all time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a graphic novel to start, but it was 3 issues of the series, and it's about like these pets, a dog, a cat, and a rabbit, who end up being taken by the military and formatted with these big weaponized suits, and they try to escape their facility, and they're hunted down.
Okay.
It's a quick read. I've read it more than anything else, comic-wise, in my entire life. It's a very, I don't know. There's just something about the story. Frank Quietly did the artwork, and it's gorgeous. And to bring up Tarantino again, it's like when Tarantino wrote Homeward Bound.
Oh,
Do you know what I mean? So you've got like the you got the fluffy animals, but you also have like there's a lot of violence and gore, and it's got a lot to say. And I love that book a lot, so I always recommend it to people.
Yeah. Awesome.
What else I got? Oh,
Watchmen.
Watchmen? Yeah, Watchmen. I don't want to bring up Watchmen because I actually did a whole podcast just on Watchmen. So
there's so much.
There's just so much content. But yes, I'm a huge fan of Watchmen. I have down to Mark Russell writes these. He writes a lot of good stuff, but specifically he wrote Snagglepuss and Flintstones. And both those books, they're transcendent. And he used these corny characters to tell like very human stories, especially Snagglepuss. That one blew me away like month after month. I couldn't believe how good that one was.
I still have to read that. It's on my list.
So. So I go home, read that one, because Mark Russell, and whenever he does something for DC or whatever, it's really, really good too. So Mark Russell.
Indies too.
What else did I put down? We got some good stuff here. And then I always recommend to people who haven't read comics stuff that are not superhero oriented. So like Blankets I recommend a lot. That's a really good one. And then a book called The Sculptor. That's by the guy who does the Understanding Comics series.
I know what you mean.
I'm blanking. What's that?
Scott
McCloud. Yeah, he wrote a book called The Sculptor.
Yeah.
And that is one you can sit down with it, read over the evening. It'll change you a little bit.
Yeah, that's on my list as well.
That's a really good one. I have a signed copy if you want to borrow it. It's a very good
I don't know,
one.
Signed copies. People are like, don't touch my signed copy.
Oh no, I'm all for it. I've got a Rising Storm signed by Kevin Scott. I got one from out of print, so.
I binge read that book.
I'm halfway through, so no spoilers.
No.
Please.
We can talk about the High Republic in a totally different video.
So we got a Star Wars video, okay. So we mentioned Brian K. Grant Morrison is a huge one. Tom King, anything that Tom King writes, I'm all about. He hasn't disappointed me yet, and I actually like. So Grant Morrison's a really good example of a writer who I love, who doesn't always get it right.
Right.
And the thing is, though, he always goes for it.
Yes.
So even if I'm like, what the F was this? At least like he goes for it, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I read his Wonder Woman Earth 1, the 3 volumes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, this is a great take on Wonder Woman. Everyone needs to read this. So, anyway, I think that's all I've read.
Grant Morrison has pretty good takes on a lot of people.
Just on life.
Arkham Asylum.
I have read Arkham Asylum because Kyle it's his favorite thing.
Yeah, and that's really good, like, sit down and just, an hour read or whatever. Like, it's a very, very good story. But Grant Morrison, he wrote a book called Super Gods. And that is like, it's a biography plus talking about the comic industry in itself, so it's kind of meta. But he introduced me to the idea of fiction suits, which is like, he gave a good example of, how Stan Lee and Kirby used to write themselves into Fantastic Four books, right? So you've got, like, he's basically describing the fact that, like, a 2D world to us seems inaccessible until you make yourself 2D. So you can actually put yourself into comic books to interact with these characters. So it essentially makes all of literature real because you can put yourself into it. You can travel there, and he uses the term fiction suits. And so, like, that kind of implanted in me. He's got a lot of really, really great ideas.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
He's like the next Grant Morrison.
I don't know about that. He's brilliant.
2.0.
So the thing that I am very different than Grant Morrison about is he really likes these big ideas, kind of like Hickman.
Yeah.
Hickman loves these big ideas. He doesn't talk down to anybody.
Yeah.
I like taking big ideas and making them very simple.
Yeah.
Which is like, you get to the end of the Weirdos and there's this letter from God and you're like, what is this all about? and that it's just there.
Right.
And you're like, okay, and it's supposed to just kind of take you out of the story for a second on purpose, but it doesn't try to talk down to you. It's not this complex idea.
Right.
It's just the idea that someone created that book, right? Someone is the God of that book.
Right.
And around me, there's a whole lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
And so when he says the universe is bigger than God, that's what I'm getting at.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I had some people who were like, oh my gosh, that's anti-religion. And I was like, no, it's very inclusive.
Right.
Because I said the universe is bigger than God, which means that there might be a God.
Yeah, you can interpret it however you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's actually it's the most inclusive thing I can think of.
Yeah.
And so I've had a lot of debates about that. But yeah, so that's just like a really big idea made really small. So that's what I like to do. So I'm not a Morrison or a Hickman to where I know these complicated things and I can, write these books. I just like to take really big ideas and just
simplify.
Make them little.
Yeah.
Make them
easier to read, understand maybe.
All right, so we did books. We were talking about films and shows.
I mean, that could be a whole nother. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like while we're at it, I did put down a couple, and so for films, I always tell people to check out Scott Pilgrim vs. the World because it is one of the best comic adaptations of all time. Yeah. Just last month it celebrated 10 years, and they had it back in theaters, and I went to go see it for my birthday. Yeah. And it just never gets old. It's just such a well done film, and every time I see it, something new pops up, and I'm like.
Didn't they just release Brie Larson's song again?
Oh, did they? Yeah, okay. I bet they did, because during quarantine they got them all together on Zoom to do a reading, and I was like, this is just. So Scott Pilgrim is just one of the best adaptations of all time. It's up there with like Watchmen, which I know is divisive, but I like Zack Snyder.
Yes, so do I.
What do we say? Yeah, so Zack Snyder, Watchmen, mentioned that. Spider-Man is big for films for me. I think I saw the original Spider-Man more times in theaters than anything else. And that came out when I was maybe 17 years old. Yeah. And so that was hugely influential.
Wow.
2001?
Yeah, I was 16 then. Yeah. 16, 17 years old. Wow. Yeah, so I remember when X-Men came out, I was like 15, the first X-Men, and I was like, wow, like this is, this is that was one of the first movies where you're like, okay, well, superhero things don't have to be this kind of like campy thing that we had seen with like Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. And then Spider-Man came out, and I was like, wow, like that was like life-changing for me, where I was like, okay, this is like this is a real art form. Right. Which people can still argue against, but for me that was very life changing. And Spider-Man just has always been one of my favorite characters. Yeah. And then I just mentioned Batman in all of his forms. I mean, I think the first one came out in '89, so I was 4. I remember those first 2 Burton films scared the hell out of me, and that's how I knew Batman. And so Batman's always been I need that balance between scary and adventure. Do you know what I mean, for my Batman? So when Forever and Batman and Robin came out, even as a kid, I was like, I don't know if this is my Batman. It's kind of fun and you can laugh at it, but I didn't really feel like the Batman that I knew inherently. Because I had the Tim Burton Batman, and then I had the animated series. Right. Which, is still... I remember the first episode coming out. What year is it? 92?
92.
So 7 years old. I remember putting all the couch cushions on the floor and jumping around and watching the first episode of Batman. So
I did not have that life as a child, but I wish I did.
Well, you get it as an adult. Yeah. So you know what? You don't have to ever grow up.
That's true.
Says the people having an interview in a comic book store.
I know. I binge watch BTAS during quarantine. So.
Yeah, and you're a better person for it, aren't you? Yeah.
Life changed.
Yeah, and so a lot of us grew up with that, So yeah, that Spider-Man was hugely influential. And then I think as much as the good movies are fun to talk about, like the Dark Knight trilogy and everything, I think it's even more fun to talk about the movies that were like half good. So like Fantastic Four and Green Lantern I watch Fantastic Four, the new one, every single year on my birthday, trying to find something good about it, and I can't. But at the same time, there's something that compels me to watch it year after year. But Green Lantern is legitimately half a good movie. Yeah, it's a half a good, really good movie, and then the other half is just like, what were you thinking?
Show me Oa. That's it.
Or I mean, like, what's up with there's a history of making these giant characters into big like dust particles, these clouds, and it's like. No, man. Like we know what these characters look like. Or at the very least, like make them imposing clouds, not the Dust Bowl of Kansas. Like just not very scared on a cosmic level.
The Galactic Syndrome. Galactus and Fantastic Four too.
Yeah, like it's a bummer. Yeah. But there's still like half a good movie there, which compels me to watch it again. And then for series, before diving into the Marvel and DC stuff. Umbrella Academy is one of those shows that makes the source material better, which is like super exciting when it comes to comics because like usually you'll get like a straight adaptation or you'll get one that ignores the source material altogether. But Umbrella Academy actually makes the comics better. Yes. Which is, and I love Gerard Way. I think he's kind of like a Morrison acolyte. Like he loves Grant Morrison as much as I do. But he gets to write comics for a professional living, which is great. And he's also in a little band called My Chemical Romance.
Oh yeah, small band.
I have tickets to their show, so don't cancel Gerard. All right? Oh my gosh. Don't cancel. But his books, they're kind of like broad strokes of a story. And then you watch the series and all the emotional like details are there, so that makes the books better. And Gerard's actually said it himself, like all the kids in Umbrella Academy are all these white kids. And then when they cast the show, they're like, we're gonna make it diverse, and he's like, yeah, they're adopted, that makes sense. Right. He's like, I don't know why I didn't do that in the first place, like so he admits himself that it makes the source material better. So it's actually a more enjoyable experience to go back to the books after you read the series, and that's a really cool symbiotic relationship between those two. Yeah. But DC and Marvel shows, I watch all the DC shows, basically the CW shows, the DCU shows. Yes. They're so cinematic now. The new Superman and Lois show is phenomenal.
So good. Even the new Batwoman.
Oh yes, and I just finished that last week. With the
So
the new Gotham villains that are, going to be invading next season. That looks really
Plus,
cool.
I think Alice just makes that show like almost her own.
Yeah.
Like the actress is just so good as Alice.
And she had a bigger chance to shine this season.
Yeah.
With, like, they kind of caused a vacuum with the whole
Right.
Kane family, so she had to be the emotional center of that.
Right.
Yeah, they done a really good job with that.
Oh yeah.
But with the Superman and Lois show and Stargirl, even like Swamp Thing, I feel like was
Yeah.
super underrated. They're just very
that's
cinematic
why.
shows.
Yeah.
But
they are.
yeah. And then the
Titans.
Marvel shows. Oh yeah, Titans is great. Yeah, fantastic.
Doom Patrol.
Doom Patrol is one of the
obviously.
best. Yeah, it's one of the best shows. Not superhero shows, just one of the best shows on TV.
100%.
Yeah, that's a show where just the emotional core is just so strong. And I was watching it one day and I was like, I wonder why I like this so much. And I was like, oh, it's because everyone's at least a little bit sad.
Yes.
And for whatever
it is.
reason, that just makes the show very compelling to watch because it's just everyone's just at least a little bit sad. And you're like, okay, it makes you feel a little better while you watch it.
And it makes you want to keep watching that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, those are the DC shows, and then the Marvel shows. I have a huge hole in my heart with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. not being on anymore. That was one of my favorite shows ever. And actually, we were talking about Brushfire, my new series, and one of the big influences on that is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Okay.
So Brushfire deals with like these, it's wildlife, mostly squirrels, but there's mice, there's frogs. It's this group of wildlife who live underground and they have technology, and so they go on adventures and they solve mysteries. And that's the genesis of that. So Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is kind of a direct influence on that, as is like a show like Fringe. Fringe is one of my favorite shows of all time, and there's a father-son relationship, and in Brushfire there's a mother-son relationship that we really explore as kind of the heart of that. So that's some of the influences on that coming up. But it kind of bums me out that the MCU is all about connectivity, and then the TV shows got kind of brushed aside.
Right.
Which the Disney Plus things are changing quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
Because those series are outstanding. It's a little movie every single week, and they're very much connected to the MCU. So.
Oh yeah.
So I'm glad they've kind of course corrected on that.
Yeah.
But
And you mentioned squirrels a lot. I know you love Squirrel Girl.
I do. I do love Squirrel Girl.
I know I need to read Squirrel Girl. So why is Squirrel Girl awesome?
She's just
And underrated.
I don't know if she's underrated because
okay.
she's unbeatable.
Okay. Oh,
I mean, when
that's
you put
true. That's
unbeatable
true.
in her title,
Yeah.
like I don't know. I think that's
Underrated.
properly rated. I think that's
true.
Yeah,
I mean,
but she's just like the most positive character in comics. Yeah, like if Marvel's like, hey, we're calling, what do you want to write? I'm like, let me write Squirrel Girl because I have some ideas for her, but she's just like one of these beacons, and it's not like a toxic positivity. Like she's still, because you can be too positive, you can kind of miss. She's not that though.
Right.
She's very rational, and she's got her finger on the pulse of the world, but. Yeah, she'd be a fun character to write. There's her, and then SpiderMan is one of my favorite characters. Silver Surfer is. I don't have a lot of toys. I got one shelf of toys, and wish I had more. But I have one shelf, and I have the most Silver Surfer figures. He's a dude who did the worst things possible, and he's just trying to come back from that.
Oh yeah.
He's not just like a Superman who's just been a hero the whole time. He's someone who literally helped commit genocide, which is the worst thing I think a person could probably do.
Yeah.
And he still strives to be a hero. You know what I mean? And that's very relatable for me.
Yeah.
Someone like Silver Surfer or the Hulk even.
Yeah, and you can make these mistakes, but you can still write them.
Yep.
Right.
And if not write them, you can at least do better the next day. Like I was just mentioned the Hulk, and there was I mention all the time that comic book saved my life, and there was right after I got sober, there was an Avengers miniseries called No Surrender, and in it Bruce Banner comes back, and there's 2 pages in that book, and I was struggling personally. I was struggling very much this day. And I'm reading this, and Jarvis and Bruce Banner are having a conversation. And like I said, it's just 2 pages. But Bruce tells Jarvis, he's like, do you know what it's like to wake up in the morning and have to turn on the TV so you can see what you did the night before? And it seems kind of unrelatable, but it's very much so when you think about it. And then Jarvis said, you think of the Avengers as like avenging our planet against aliens, but really you're just avenging yourself.
Right.
And so when you think about Avengers like that, like literally we're all Avengers. And you're like, wow, that's just very good writing.
Yeah.
So that page that day, that saved my life. And I was like, all right, and I got to keep kind of going through my thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there's some of the characters that I enjoy quite a bit.
Awesome. Let's see. So, you have any upcoming conventions?
So the reason we're here is I have an event on July 21st around 5 p.m. Come here to Issues, needed in Apple Valley. and I'll be here. I'm actually releasing a brand new book called Push.
Yes.
It is the sequel to the book Flip I was talking about earlier. I don't want to say too much about it, except for, what should I say about it? It's a sequel, I guess, 8 years in the making. So
Sequel,
no
as
hype.
in, like the end of the.
I would
no
say
trilogy.
so. No, I don't have anything planned. I didn't, when I wrote Flip, I didn't have a sequel planned. I had ideas.
Yeah.
For 8 years, I had ideas. And I didn't really have anything concrete. And then I had this idea for how this book could go. And
Yeah.
I started writing it. And it ended up being a story about, we see a lot of situations where a person seems like they're okay on the outside and they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And that ends in different ways, but sometimes it ends with that person taking their life. And I wanted to explore what it was like being in that person's head.
Mm.
And so Push takes place a year after Flip, and it's got the same main character, Liam, and he's dealing with the losses that he dealt with, I think a lot more deeply than he was in the first book.
Okay.
And so that's basically what the story is about without giving too much away. And so on July 21st here at Issues
Yes.
Needed, we'll be celebrating the release of that book, but also the release of Theia and Times of Solid State and the Weirdos, because over the last year, I don't know if you heard, but there was a pandemic.
Yeah,
There
no.
was a pandemic over the last
We
year.
just
so,
erased that
yeah,
year.
we
It's
tried
gone.
to skip past it. And so because of that,
Yes.
I
Yes.
literally released 4 books in a year, and I had no parties for it. So this is going to be like a
The
big,
bash.
yes, I'm calling
Yes.
it the books release party. So we're going to be
Yes.
able to celebrate all this
Plural.
stuff in person. I'm fully vaccinated. Come here, let me lick your face. Oh, that's but yeah, it's gonna be really, really fun. It's gonna be my first, I guess, outing since
Yeah.
everything shut down.
Right.
And then after that, I do have a couple conventions in the fall. I will be at FallCon officially.
Awesome.
I got
September.
a table. That's September 25th.
25th.
Yep.
Yeah.
At the State Fairgrounds. So come see me in September,
The
and then in
grandstand.
October, yeah, the grandstand.
Yeah.
And then in October, I'll be down in Rochester at Nerding Out Con.
Yes.
I think that's the 23rd and 24th.
2 exceptionally rare.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I will be there
Yep.
as well. So I've got some stuff coming up, and hopefully there'll be
Awesome.
stuff in between, but nothing planned yet.
Yeah. So come get Dennis's books. Get
All of them.
both of these and everything else.
And all
Yeah.
of the books. All of the books.
What about the
And
print?
you have a print
Oh yeah,
as
I
well
do have a print.
for the first 25 people.
Yeah, so I don't do a lot of prints, and I don't do a lot of artwork in general, like outside of the book, but I wanted to do something fun for this event. So the first 25 people who come in will get one of these limited edition prints. There we go.
You
yeah.
see it here first. Well, not here. Your social media.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they've never seen my social
That's
media,
true.
which
Yeah.
we'll give
Yeah.
them. So yeah, that'll be available to the first 25 people, and the cost is free. So,
Free.
Yeah, so
For the-
it's very affordable.
But not for the books.
No,
But for
the,
to
the
come.
books are not free, but the print is very free.
Yes.
So come for the free stuff, stay
Yeah.
for the stuff you have to pay for.
Yes. Awesome.
And then, we mentioned social media. So yeah, I'm
Yes.
pretty much at Dennis Vogen on everything. So Twitter at Dennis Vogen, Instagram at Dennis Vogen,
Mm-hmm.
on Facebook it's Dennis Vogen and Sleeping Kitty Productions, or you can just friend me. I mean, why not?
And you have a website.
I do have a website, and that's myname.com. So DennisVogen.com.
It's not myname.com.
No, it's not.
my
If
name.
you go to myname.com, I don't know where it'll take
Yeah.
you, but actually in the
Yeah.
comments, let us know.
Where it goes.
What's that myname.com? Because we are all curious.
And you also have a blog on there too, right?
I do have a blog. That's actually where this book came
Yes.
from. So yeah, that was just me writing a lot of essays about a lot of things, personal things, and also like more worldly things, especially in 2020, because there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yes.
And so I started, more and more writing, I guess, pieces about kindness and just being more empathetic towards people, because there's a lot of not doing that.
How important it is to
Yeah.
be kind.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's where a lot of that stuff came from. And then my mom passed away last year, and so more pieces came out of that because I was just kind of writing to deal with it. That's usually what I do. So like, with the Weirdos, I want to talk about adult issues, so I wrote about it with,
Coping
this.
mechanism.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a way to
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
not just deal with it, but connect to people who feel the same way.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Bring it together. All right, well, come here July 21st. Issues needed.
Yes. Issues Needed Apple. So are you reading all High Republic then?
Yeah?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm not as far as you, but
Okay,
I have all the
alright.
comic. I've read all the comics.
Yes.
I feel like these are not caught up to Rising Storm though.
So this is like the second arc.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, yeah, if you read them in like book release order and comic release order, then it makes more sense, I think.
Well, I did, because I read this first.
Yeah, I read. No, that didn't matter with.
Oh, it didn't. Oh,
actually.
okay.
Kevin Scott said you can do whatever first.
Oh, okay.
It's like happened at the same time, different places. Yeah.
The Marvels has been kind of a wild ride. I don't know if anyone's been reading
Missed out on that one.
I legitimately have no idea what's going on, but he's like using all of these characters over a long span of time.
Yeah.
Which is kind of fun.
And you got Monster Series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not Money Shot?
Vampire the Masquerade.
Yes.
I actually recommend to a lot of people, because it started in Minneapolis, so I read the first one thinking like, oh yeah, like this will be kind of a fun one-issue read, and I'm obsessed now.
Yes.
Same.
It's a very good book.
Yeah.
In fact, if we did our top picks last week, that would have been on it. But
Kyle's also been reading Spider Bill and Black Widow.
Yeah, I heard Beta Ray has a big following. Someone came in here last week looking for back issues, and they're all gone.
Right.
This issue with crossover was amazing. I voted for that in your poll last week. This was my Chip, writing about Chip was very unique. This was very good. The United States of
surprisingly good.
Yeah. The first couple pages talking about Captain's legacy and his idea of freedom. The Eternals I know has mixed reviews, but I like it a lot. I'm a big fan of Eternals.
Yeah.
This wall looks huge, by the way, on the camera.
That's not even
The wall is huge.
The new release.
I have a soft spot for Beast Wars. I got a big soft spot.
What about the movie coming out?
I heard that Ron Perlman is playing, is it Optimus Primal?
Yep.
He had played him in like in a web series or something, so like he's got precedent on that. But yeah, I'm very excited about that.
It's also Ron Perlman.
Ron Perlman, okay. Is that what did I say?
No, I'm just saying it's Ron Perlman.
Yeah. Anything that he does is going to be fun. But they're also doing the Netflix series.
Yep.
And they're going to Beast Wars Land, and they put a trailer out last week.
So there used to be a CGI version of Beast Wars.
Yeah.
Oh, are you telling her?
Yeah.
I was like,
She
it's
doesn't
actually
know Transformers.
it's on Tubi.
I do.
It's on Tubi?
It's on Tubi. The whole series is.
Oh no.
And so once in a while I'm like, what should I watch? And I'm like, I'm gonna watch some Beast Wars on Tubi, and it brings me right back to being like 9 years old. And I love Beast Wars. I got the original Cheetor and the new Cheetor. I'm not even I like Transformers. I'm not a huge fan, but Beast Wars is like my jam.
This has also been really good. I don't know if it was the last one or not.
Two Moons. Actually, Neil at Mind's Eye had mentioned that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good.
We blame Neil for a lot of our polls now.
Yeah, it needs. Also, it's way down there, but Department of Truth. So good.
It's right there by Daredevil.
Oh, right here.
Yeah.
And so last week a guy came in and said I was done with Marvel books, and I said pick up Daredevil if you're going to go. If there's one Marvel book I could recommend to anybody, it's Daredevil. Every single issue is just it's a banger.
I started Charles Soule's run, haven't finished it, and now we have to. I've heard Chips is.
You've not started Chips at all?
No.
Do we need to read Charles to go on the Chips, or
no? Not at all.
He's been waiting for that for some reason.
I've been collecting the trades.
I mean, there might be some moments that you'll appreciate more,
Yeah.
but I mean, as someone, I went in cold, and it's a brand new storyline, and yeah, it's epic. It's just a very, very good read.
Yeah. So now we gotta read it. Okay.
Yeah, just drop that. Just go read it right now.
Yeah.
You'll see a lot of cool old stuff up here.
Yeah.
Some Spider-Man issues. Howard the Duck up there.
Do you want to do that wall?
Yeah, you can go over
The
there.
long
Sure.
wall?
Yeah. There's a lot more over there.
This is like all the issues.
Marvel to DC. You can just pan down.
I'm kind of a sucker for anything X-Men, so I literally have every single issue since the beginning of Dawn of X. I have every single X issue, and honestly, there's not a bad one in the bunch. Like there are some that are better than others. There are some that I think will be classics, but there's not really a bad X book right now.
Hellfire Gala was fun.
Yeah, it was super fun, and people were making fun of it before it started, and I was like, nah, just trust in the. And then they literally turned Mars into the capital of the universe. Like, how do you? That's comic book storytelling right there. Like that's the only thing you can do. Fantastic Four. Oh, this is Mark Russell.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
And
mentioned
one of
Mark
my
Russell,
favorite, the cover behind that, the 70s cover. It's one of my favorite covers
that's
right
super
now.
cool.
So
I also
So, yeah.
like this cover.
you like Peach.
Yeah, man, Peach.
Yeah.
She does some good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Chip had done the Spider-Man life story, and then Mark's doing Fantastic Four life story.
Fantastic Four.
And keeping on Chip. You got Spider Shadow, as well if. So.
Yeah. Are there people love it or don't like it?
No, people are loving it.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's got its
Chip's not doing anything wrong.
No, I mean Stillwater is one of the best indies right now.
100%.
The first issue, you're just like, okay, this is.
Yeah,
I'll stick with this till the end.
I'm
Like,
hooked.
yeah.
Yeah.
Over here. Nick Spencer's Spider. The only complaint I have about Nick Spencer's Spider-Man is that it's just too frequent. I got 70 issues of Nick Spencer's Spider-Man, which is a lot for like a. It feels like it's only been on for like 6 months.
Let me ask you, can you recall any issues from that run? 'Cause I'm reading it too.
Quite a few. Like the ones that stick with me are like, do you read the Vermin issue?
Yep.
Yeah, like stuff like that sticks with me. But yeah, there are some issues that are just so full of stuff that it's hard to remember week to week, especially when they come out every 2 weeks as opposed to every month. It doesn't stick with you in the same way. It moves very fast.
Yeah.
But I like Nick Spencer ever since I read The Fix. Have you ever read The Fix?
No, but I've
You've had it in
seen
your hands, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
a
I have
comedy.
it.
It's a comedy book. It's a very adult book. But I read that and I was like, oh, this is good stuff. And then I found out he's writing Spider-Man. And I was like, okay. So I've been along for the ride.
And that was Dennis Vogen with our first interview for Noggin Comics. He's going to be having an event later this month on July 21st for Issues Needed. If you can make it, that would be awesome. RSVP at that site that we mentioned. See you at the comic shop, and thank you for tuning in.